The lights sparkled like fallen stars. The music mingled with lively laughter, creating a symphony of extravagance at the annual Rose Ball. Victoria, a young woman with lustrous chestnut hair and deep blue eyes that always held a hint of melancholy, tried to blend into the vibrant atmosphere. She wasn't one for such opulent parties, but an invitation from her best friend, Amelia, was something she couldn't refuse. Amelia, with her dazzling looks and outgoing personality, was always the center of attention, and tonight was no exception. She had pulled Victoria towards the VIP corner, where three of the city's most powerful men were conversing. There was Mr. Harrison, a real estate mogul with a friendly smile but sharp, cold eyes. Mr. Sterling, a young but immensely powerful tech magnate who always maintained a cool demeanor, and Mr. Thorne, a renowned lawyer with incredible persuasive abilities, who always knew how to make people believe his story. The three of them, though different in personality and field, shared a mysterious and strong bond. They were men whom everyone in the city respected, and at times feared. Victoria felt a cold shiver run down her spine as they looked at her, not with desire, but with an evaluating gaze, as if she were an item to be appraised. Amelia, seemingly oblivious to her friend's discomfort, happily introduced Victoria. "This is Victoria, my best friend," Amelia said, her voice full of pride. "She's a talented artist. You should see her paintings." Victoria shyly bowed her head. She always felt awkward being in the spotlight, especially in front of such influential figures. Mr. Harrison smiled, a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's an honor to meet you, Victoria. We always admire those with artistic talent." Mr. Sterling simply nodded slightly, his gaze briefly sweeping over Victoria, then returning to Mr. Thorne, as if this conversation wasn't interesting enough for his full attention. Mr. Thorne, on the other hand, seemed more interested. He began asking Victoria about her work, her inspirations, and the paintings she was currently working on. Victoria noticed something unusual in Mr. Thorne's way of speaking. He wasn't just asking polite questions. He seemed to be trying to probe her, to delve into her deepest thoughts. Meanwhile, Amelia and Mr. Harrison were discussing an upcoming charity project, and Mr. Sterling was scrolling through his phone, seemingly detached from everyone around him. Victoria felt isolated in her conversation with Mr. Thorne, as if he was trying to pull her into a private world, a world she didn't want to enter. She tried to remain calm, answering politely but not overly open. She knew the nature of such parties where sweet words often hid dark intentions. As the night wore on, Victoria felt tired and wanted to go home. She told Amelia she wanted to leave, but Amelia seemed to be having an interesting conversation with Mr. Harrison and didn't want it to end. "You go ahead. I'll take a taxi later," Amelia said, her smile still radiant. Victoria hesitated for a moment, then decided to leave alone. She went downstairs to the lobby and called a taxi. As she was waiting, a hand gently touched her shoulder. It was Mr. Thorne. "Are you leaving?" he asked, his voice deep and warm. "Let me give you a ride. I was just about to leave myself." Victoria felt a little surprised. She didn't want to go with him, but refusing outright seemed impolite. "It's all right. I've already called a taxi," she said. "Thank you for the offer." Mr. Thorne smiled, a seemingly apologetic smile. "Is that so? Well, that's a pity. I hope we'll meet again." He didn't try to persuade her further, and Victoria felt relieved. When the taxi arrived, she quickly got in and sighed with relief as it drove away from the building. She had no idea that at that moment, she had escaped something far darker than she could ever imagine. A few days later, Victoria received a message from Amelia. "Can you come over? I have something to tell you." The message had an urgency Victoria had never seen from Amelia. When Victoria arrived at Amelia's house, she found her friend sitting on the sofa, her face pale, her eyes swollen as if she had been crying. "What's wrong, Amelia?" Victoria asked, feeling worried. Amelia looked up at her, and Victoria recognized the extreme fear in her friend's eyes. I did something very foolish," Amelia said, her voice trembling. "After you left, I stayed to talk with Mr. Harrison and Mr. Sterling. They invited me to dinner." Victoria felt a sense of unease rising. "And?" Amelia buried her face, tears starting to fall. "They didn't just invite me to dinner. They forced me to do some things. Things I didn't want to do." Victoria was stunned. She hugged Amelia, trying to comfort her friend. "Tell me everything, Amelia. Tell me everything." Amelia began to recount, her voice faltering, but what she told made Victoria shiver. It was a story of control, of threats, of dark secrets hidden beneath the glamorous facade of the three powerful men. Amelia had been drawn into a vortex from which she couldn't escape, and now she was terrified. Victoria felt a surge of anger within her. She couldn't believe those men could do such things. She was determined to help Amelia, no matter what she had to face. She didn't know that this decision would lead her into a difficult battle, where the truth was hidden by power, and their very survival was threatened. The echoes from the Rose Ball were not just happy memories, but the beginning of a nightmare. Victoria and Amelia sat in Victoria's small apartment, the streetlight filtering through the window, casting long shadows on the floor. Amelia had told everything, how Mr. Harrison and Mr. Sterling had gradually drawn her into a complex web of threats and coercion. She had been exploited, turned into a puppet in their game of power. Every detail Amelia recounted filled Victoria with a surge of indignation. She couldn't accept that her friend had endured such horrific things. "We have to do something, Amelia," Victoria said, her voice resolute. "We can't let them get away with this." Amelia shook her head, her eyes still teary. "You don't understand, Victoria. They're too powerful. They can do anything. They have connections everywhere, from the police to the authorities. No one will believe us." "But we can't give up," Victoria countered. "If we do nothing, they'll continue to harm others. We have to find a way to expose them." Victoria began to think. She recalled how Mr. Thorne had tried to approach her at the party. He seemed different from the other two, at least in how he presented himself. She wondered if he might be a weak link in their chain. She also remembered a story she'd heard about Mr. Sterling, about his sister who had mysteriously disappeared years ago, her death attributed to an accident. These small details began to connect in Victoria's mind, forming a terrifying picture. Amelia was still scared, but Victoria's resilience seemed to instill a little hope in her. They began to plan. The first step was to gather evidence. Amelia had been forced to attend several secret meetings where she'd overheard sensitive information about the three men's illicit dealings. She also had some messages and emails they had sent her, which could serve as evidence. Victoria, with the keen observational skills of an artist, began to record every detail Amelia shared. She sketched the places Amelia had been, the people she had met, the expressions on the faces of Mr. Harrison, Mr. Sterling, and Mr. Thorne. She believed these visual records could help them visualize the network they were trying to dismantle. During their investigation, Victoria realized that these three men were not just powerful individuals. They were dangerous individuals willing to do anything to protect their interests. They had built an empire based on deception, intimidation, and manipulation. Victoria felt a shiver of fear creep into her mind, but she couldn't back down. She had to fight for Amelia and for others who might have become their victims. One night, as Victoria was reviewing the documents Amelia provided, she received an anonymous message. "Be careful. They're watching you." The message left no trace, no IP address, as if it vanished right after being sent. Victoria felt a cold rush down her spine. She knew she had stepped into a dangerous fight, and there was no turning back. She and Amelia decided to seek help from an old friend of Victoria's, an investigative journalist named Sarah. Sarah was a brave and resolute woman who always fought for the truth. When Victoria told Sarah Amelia's story, Sarah immediately recognized its significance. "This isn't just a personal matter," Sarah said. "This is a much bigger story, a story about the corruption of power. We have to expose them." All three began to collaborate. Sarah used her investigative skills to uncover more evidence, contact confidential sources, and try to find other victims. Victoria continued to document, sketching important details, and Amelia, though still scared, had grown stronger. She was determined to stand up for herself and for others. However, the deeper they delved into the story, the more they realized the complexity of this web of power. It wasn't just three men. It was a larger system, including corrupt officials, manipulated legal professionals, and individuals willing to sell their conscience for money and power. Victoria felt as though they were facing a giant monster, and they were tiny ants trying to fight against it. One day, when Victoria was home alone, she heard a knock at the door. She opened it to find Mr. Thorne standing there, a bouquet of roses in his hand. He smiled, his smile as warm as before. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," he said. "I just wanted to stop by and apologize for that evening. I wasn't very polite." Victoria felt a surge of suspicion. She knew Mr. Thorne wasn't a simple man, and she couldn't trust him. She didn't invite him in, but simply stood there, looking at him coldly. "It's all right, Mr. Thorne," she said. "I don't think we have anything to talk about." Mr. Thorne didn't seem disappointed. He just smiled gently. "I understand. But I want you to know, Victoria, that not everything is as it seems. Sometimes the people you think are your enemies can be your allies." He placed the bouquet on the doorstep, then turned and left. Victoria closed the door, feeling a sense of unease. She didn't know what Mr. Thorne was trying to say, but she knew he wasn't a simple man. He could be a threat, or he could be a crucial source of information. She couldn't trust him, but she also couldn't ignore his cryptic words. The web of power was slowly revealing itself, and Victoria knew they were on a dangerous path, where every step could lead to unforeseen consequences. She didn't know what awaited them, but she knew she couldn't turn back. The morning sun streamed through the window, but couldn't dispel the gloom in Victoria's room. She and Sarah had worked tirelessly, collecting every small piece of the story, trying to piece them together into a complete picture. Amelia had become a vital part of the investigation, providing inside information that no one else could have. Her courage had overcome her fear, and she was determined to fight for justice. They discovered that the three men were not only involved in illegal dealings but also linked to the concealment of several mysterious disappearances in the past, cases that the police had quickly closed. The story of Mr. Sterling's sister, who was supposedly killed in an accident, began to seem even more suspicious. Victoria felt a chill when she realized they were facing a criminal organization far larger than they had ever imagined. Sarah had contacted some former colleagues, investigative journalists who had been threatened or obstructed when trying to expose similar cases. She received support and useful advice, but also realized they were embarking on an incredibly dangerous battle. One evening, as Victoria was reviewing the documents, she received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, a deep voice spoke. "I think you'll want to hear this." It was Mr. Thorne. He said nothing more, just played a recording. It was a conversation between Mr. Harrison and Mr. Sterling, where they were discussing how to deal with anyone who might threaten their operations. Their tone was cold and ruthless, sending shivers down Victoria's spine. "Why are you helping me?" Victoria asked, her voice full of suspicion. Mr. Thorne sighed. "I was once a part of them, Victoria, but I can't keep watching them do such terrible things. I know too much, and I don't want to be a part of those crimes anymore." He began to tell his story. Mr. Thorne had been drawn into Mr. Harrison and Mr. Sterling's network years ago, when he was a young, ambitious lawyer. He had been manipulated by them, forced to cover up their crimes, and gradually he had become one of them. But deep down, he still had a sliver of conscience, a touch of regret. And when he saw Victoria and Amelia, young women trying to fight for the truth, he decided to act. "They have a very sophisticated system," Mr. Thorne said. "They use shell companies, offshore bank accounts, and political connections to cover everything up. It's very difficult to find direct evidence." He offered to help. He had access to some inside information, some documents they had carefully hidden. He also knew about some potential witnesses, people they had threatened and forced into silence. Victoria and Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. With Mr. Thorne's help, they might have a chance to win. They devised a detailed plan. Mr. Thorne would provide information, and Sarah would use her investigative skills to verify and uncover more evidence. Victoria would be responsible for documenting everything, from conversations to the documents they found. Amelia would continue to play her role, pretending as if nothing had happened, so as not to arouse suspicion. The investigation continued, and they slowly unveiled the curtain concealing the horrifying crimes of the three men. They discovered that Mr. Sterling had orchestrated his sister's death to seize her inheritance. Mr. Harrison had used his power to manipulate the real estate market and launder money. And all three of them were involved in a human trafficking network, where young women were forced to do things against their will. As the evidence gradually piled up, Victoria, Sarah, and Amelia felt immense pressure. They knew they were dealing with incredibly dangerous men, individuals who would do anything to protect themselves. They had to act carefully, leaving no traces. One day, Mr. Thorne disappeared. He didn't answer his phone, leaving no trace. Victoria and Sarah felt a surge of anxiety. They knew Mr. Thorne had risked his life to help them, and now he might be in danger. They tried to find him, but to no avail. Mr. Thorne's disappearance made them realize that time was running out. They had to release the evidence they had collected as soon as possible, before it was too late. Sarah decided to publish the story in her newspaper, despite the risks. Victoria would provide her drawings, visual evidence of what had happened. Amelia would stand as a witness, telling her story to the public. The day the story was published arrived. Victoria, Sarah, and Amelia felt extremely tense. They knew it was a risky move, but they couldn't back down. Their story was on the front page of the newspaper, with a large headline, "The Dark Web of Power, the Truth Behind the City's Most Powerful Men." Immediately, the story caused a shockwave. The police began to investigate, and the public demanded justice. Mr. Harrison, Mr. Sterling, and Mr. Thorne were arrested. Although Mr. Thorne had disappeared, the evidence he provided was enough to incriminate the other two. However, the battle was not over. The three men still had extensive connections, and they would try to fight back until the very end. Victoria, Sarah, and Amelia knew they had to continue fighting, not only to ensure that the criminals were punished, but also to create a fairer world, where the vulnerable were no longer exploited and threatened. After months of legal battles, justice was finally served. Mr. Harrison and Mr. Sterling were convicted of their crimes. Although Mr. Thorne was never found, he played a crucial role in exposing the truth. Amelia found peace, and she began a new life, stronger and more resilient. Victoria continued her painting career, but now her art was not just about beauty, but also about truth, about justice, and about hope. She learned that even in the darkest shadows, the light of truth can still break through, and that a small group of people, with courage and determination, can make a big difference. The Rose Ball was now just a distant memory, but its echoes lingered, reminding them of a challenging journey that ultimately led to the triumph of justice.